Alright, so here's a sample problem. They've already telling us up front that the force is non-constant. And what we're looking at is we have a cannonball. Alright? Big, 5 kilograms. You wouldn't want to get hit by that. Traveling to the right, we'll say at 10 meters per second. It runs into the side of a fort, basically a wall. So it's going to experience a force. Now think about it. The force from the wall on the cannonball is going to push backwards. So if you look at my graph, notice time, just normal in seconds. But this is saying the force is negative, even though it's showing a positive axis because I'm lazy. -2, saying the force is against the motion. Also notice that it's saying it's not measuring -2. It's measuring -2 times 10 to the second, which means it's really -200 newtons. I do this because almost every problem and graph you're going to see is going to have funny units. So they'll have like times 10 to the third here, and then this will be in milliseconds. You really have to pay attention. We want to know, after this cannonball hits the wall, what's its final velocity? There are tons of different ways. The first thought that pops in your mind is F equals ma, but it's not a constant motion graph. So you're like, okay, I'll use impulse is mass times change in velocity, because really it's just another way of looking at force equals ma. Non-constant force, so we're thinking the area of force versus time is mass times change in velocity. It's a triangle hanging out with its buddy, the rectangle, so that's 1/2 the base times the height plus the length times the width equals mass times change in velocity. So 1/2 times 0.3 times -200 plus 0.3 times -200 equals 5 times delta V. Once you plug that in your calculator, you get the change in velocity as -18 meters per second. And there's two really important things here. One, it's negative. And the other is, it's not telling you final velocity, it's telling you change. We're not really done. Problem really asks for what's the final velocity. So we have to do one last step. Change in velocity means final velocity minus initial velocity. So -18 is the final velocity minus 10. So the final velocity is, add the 10 to their side, -8 meters per second. With a negative meaning, it's hit the wall has withstood the cannonball's impact, and the cannonball is now bouncing back at 8 meters per second, the negative meaning the other direction.